Excellent. All right, let's move on to our star of the week, MP Materials, MP on the New York Stock Exchange, a company we've looked at a number of times that has had a tremendous jump over the year, but really over the past just couple weeks or week.
Yeah, so it's really been actually phenomenal because it was really just kind of trading in a range for I don't know how many years now. It wasn't really doing much. With the rare earth element company MP Materials, symbol MP on the New York Stock Exchange, it just surged in price this week. The stock is up a whopping 91% over the last month, but 85% of the increase is just coming over the past week. Massive. The shares are now trading at $58.22. That's about a $9.5 billion market cap. The company, this is very key to why it has had such a surge. The company is the only integrated rare earth producer in the US, spanning from mining to magnets. Rare earth products are used across industries, transportation, energy, robotics, defense, and aerospace. So, like Ryan was saying, we've highlighted this before. We actually did a report on it back in 2023. At the time, the company was facing lower rare earth prices, and it was in stage 2 of 3 of its long-term strategic plan. And a quick outline in the plan really gives what their whole goal of for that company is the stage 1 was the production of rare earth ore at the Mountain Pass mine. That's actually the namesake for the company, MP Mountain Pass. Stage 2 was the separation of rare earth elements. So when you are mining rare earth elements, you get a whole array of them, and then you need to separate them into the actual individual groups of elements. So then stage 3, the production of rare earth metals, and then alloys and permanent magnets. So that's the actual product which goes into past the rare earth element market into your automotives, into your defense, and so on. The company did as well, they're in their stage 3 now. At the start of the year, they commenced the production of neodymium, praseodymium, or NdPr metal, and trial production of automotive grade magnets in January at its Fort Worth, Texas facility. So there's a big step forward that's really showing that they've actually followed through with their plan, which you don't always see, but it's obviously a good thing to see. But that's not why the stock surged. It's obviously a plus, but it was not the catalyst behind the surge in price. In Trump's tariff spat with China back in April, China actually cut off the supply of rare earth magnets to China in April. China represents over 60% of rare earth ore mined and processes over 90% of the global production. So this puts pressure on US automakers and the US defense industry. Although rare earth magnets aren't overly expensive, they're a critical part of these technologies. So the loss of magnets completely makes the end product, whether it's a car or a fighter jet, just straight impossible to manufacture. It doesn't matter if it's normally a cheap component. If you can't get that component, you can't have the end product. So that leads us just to this last week. On July 10th, the US Department of Defense, DoD, announced a $400 million direct investment in MP in convertible preferred stocks and warrants, which have the DoD becoming the largest shareholder at 15% of shares if fully converted into normal common shares. So in part of that agreement, MP is looking to build a second domestic magnet facility, which they're calling 10X, by 2028 with expected production of 10,000 tons. JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs are as well set to further finance the facility with $1 billion of commitment. Further, the DoD will provide a $150 million loan to expand the company's heavy earth element separation capabilities at Mountain Pass. And perhaps one of the most interesting aspects of this deal is the DoD is actually committed to a price floor of $110 a kilogram for the NdPr magnets. So that's regardless if the products are sold or stockpiled. This is a significant factor as it lowers the downside of the production, over doubling the current $52 per kilogram, which they had in Q1. Rare earth metals and end products or magnets go through significant price swings. So you can see here, I've neodymium oxide, a graph of that, and you can just see how much that has swung, especially post-pandemic, as supply chains were really suffering at the time, as well as the EV and electrification ramp-up, which we really saw in the early 2020s. So that downside protection is just a massive deal. It creates a long-term viability. You don't have to worry about the commodity price as much. This will cost the DoD money and thus the US taxpayer, but it does ensure the constant production of the NdPr magnets, regardless of economic conditions, which is what they really want at the end of the day. They want access to those magnets because they are critical to national defense. And next, they actually had another huge announcement. Just on Tuesday the 15th, the company announced a $500 million partnership with Apple to produce recycled rare earth magnets in the United States. MP will construct a commercial scale recycling line at Mountain Pass for magnet scraps and components from end-of-life products. MP will also expand its Fort Worth magnet facility to meet demand. So you just have another catalyst on top of that. So two massive announcements, really in a weeks period with one of the biggest companies in the world and then the DoD. So massive contracts. So after those two announcements, that makes MP our star of the week, and it's really just surged the stock price, nearly doubling in a week, which is just amazing for the shareholders of the company.
It's all coming together for MP. It's
It
all
is.
coming up MP, right? Yeah,
Exactly.
no.
Well, that's an interesting contract that they've signed with the government, and it's I mean, it makes a lot of sense, right? It's a strategic metal. They need it. So now one could also question, well, what happens if somehow things correct or normalize a little bit with China over the next couple of months? But I think even if that were to happen, the U.S. government still needs to do things like this to secure that supply. So I don't know if it would really change anything. I'm just surprised it took them so long, to be honest.
It's become strategic for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Even something that is kind of readily available and even cheap to access. If you have that fear of being cut off.